Okay, now I'm just waiting for Kevin. We have it horizontal. We have it, we know how to add people. Kevin, you should...
Hello there.
Hey, do you have headphones? Mine just ran out of frickin' batteries, because otherwise we'll feed back on each other.
I've got these guys, but they only seem to work with my laptop and not with my phone.
Give me 1 second then. I have a power cord that I'll just plug them in. There's a will, there's a way. It seems like the gods are against us. So everyone just wrap in chat. Feel free to talk a bit. I'm going to grab a soda, grab my charger, and we'll get started.
Awesome. Oh, hey Archie, what's up? I was just talking to you. I guess you know the thing I want to go do now.
You plug these in.
Right on.
Probably take a minute to, where's the hole? Okay.
Am I coming through okay on your side?
Oh, yeah. And I actually, I'm going to plug them in a different spot. 1 second again.
Right on.
I have a very tight studio, so it gets crazy moving around things. I have a wall plug here. I think that will make it easier. Okay, let's see if I can get these puppies to connect yet.
All right, the people in the stream seem to say that we're not echoing this time, so that's a good sign. Hear me?
Can you hear me or no?
Now, I can hear you.
You can hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, it was screwing up. It wouldn't connect. So we're just, if we're not echoing, then that's fine. It seems like we are a little bit, though.
It sounds okay here. Now that they can hear.
Oh, God, how many pairs of glasses do I freaking need? I'm going to bring this a little closer because I'm blind as a bat. I had a pair on my head and a pair on my face. All right, so what the purpose of this discussion is, and it's very informal. Kevin, jump in whenever you want to. Kevin and I had briefly this discussion on Facebook and found out that we agreed a whole lot. And I'm sure we're going to find a couple points we disagree on.
Of course.
But what upset me, not you didn't upset me, what upset me about the conversation was there's people like me and my dear friend Benjamin Leader who will see the word socialism and come at you full bore and not even know what you're trying to say. Now, you know I disagree with you using that word, but if you weren't so calm, I probably would have bit your head off, walked away, and thought it was a good meal. And I don't think that's not helpful. So I wanted people to understand that not all libertarian socialists are cut from the same cloth.
Absolutely. And it's worth pointing out that, I mean, in left-leaning circles, they rebel just as hard against the word capitalism. I mean, they hear that word and they shut their ears. You're a capitalist? You're no friend of mine. I'm an anti-capitalist. And then, you know, I dwell in a lot of right-leaning circles. I hang out with the Mises kids, and a lot of them are just really great people. You come to find there's a lot of common ground that gets lost in this semantic ambiguity because we hinge our arguments on words.
Yeah, and history has helped me a lot. Studying history has helped me a lot in both ways, actually. One, to understand your point of view, which has been around since the beginning of the party. Karl Hess is one of, yeah. But the problem is, and I don't mind naming names here because everyone knows, you know, you got the Coolnells and the Shipleys and whatever. I don't even know what Matt Coolnell, because I know those two split up. I have them all in block. I don't know. That's just for my peace. I don't care if people think it's cowardly. Actually, Shipley has me blocked. I never know. We go back and forth. But what they're calling libertarian socialism is not at all compatible with the party. What you are calling libertarian socialism is absolutely compatible with the party. And I think what they're doing, and why I will just encourage you to the day is long to use a different term, because they're coattailing on you.
Well,
they're coattailing on the fact that there has been libertarian socialism in the Libertarian Party, but they're pouring a different meaning into it. It would be like if a Satanist started calling themselves a Christian and said, what? There's all kinds of Satanists and Christians in the church, and they're a bunch of Satanists. You know what I'm saying? Words aren't magical. Words are just a convenient container for meaning. Well, we can decide right now that this is libertarianism, right? But
there is a reason. I'd like to say there is a reason that I insist on using the word socialism. I know it's a stigma, and it would be way easier for me to drop it. I mean, if I didn't use it, people would just listen to me more. There's a reason I continue to use it, because A, it's accurate. It is an accurate description of a left libertarian position. But B, because it's incredibly popular. I live in California. I'm very active in the LP in California. And socialism isn't a bad word around here. In fact, there's a lot of self-described socialists. And in an age where, like, you know, Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders, they got all this buzz, I think we should own that word. We should remind people that there's a much more noble incarnation of socialism that doesn't involve using the state, that doesn't involve coming to steal people's land. It's just a voluntary system. So I don't know. That's why I insist on it, is because there's an entire audience to the left that listen to me because of the way I look and because I use a word they're familiar with.
And I get that in those circles, but it's doing you a disservice in libertarian circles. But that's okay. Listen, I get the same thing. I'm just as stubborn as you are. People tell me, don't call yourself an anarchist. It'll close doors. And I'm stubborn as fuck, and I still use it.
And may I say, you pointed out the issues with Matt Kuehnel and Shipley, and I'll give credit where credit is due. Shipley stood up to Kuehnel, and I have my disagreements with Shipley, but at very least he seems to have the interests of the party at heart, because Matt Kuehnel was very clearly bringing in authoritarians. He was trying to use, you know, top left talking points. When you say things like Medicare for all, what you're saying is that you want to entrust the state with the health care of everybody, and that's not at all libertarian, socialist or otherwise. So your enemies are my enemies.
Yeah. Well, let me get this up front, and people in the audience will be very angry at me, and I don't care. Mike Shipley and I have been friends for years. I do not dislike Mike. I'm actually very fond of Mike, and I think he has the best intentions, and I think he has a heart of gold. And I just think he's really misguided. I don't know what's going on in his life. It's better for the two of us not to talk right now. But I hold no grudges. The first time he blocked me, I bawled. I mean, I am very fond of Mike Shipley. Mike Shipley used to send me postcards like every other week. Like, we were close. So I have anything I say that's about his view, it's not about him as a person.
Absolutely.
Coolnell's another matter. Coolnell's an entirely different matter.
It's personal.
But Shipley, I know some people in this group won't like him, but that's fine. I'm very, very fond of Shipley. I've spent time with him, and he genuinely cares about people. He just goes about it the wrong way sometimes, I think.
Yeah, man, I like shit. But this thing about, like, Brandon Finney, I don't think there's anything to it, man. I think Finney's a good dude. He's just more conservative.
Oh, Finney, yeah.
He's, you know, he's just...
Yeah, see... Yeah, I mean, what he's doing to Finney is shitty, and if I were Brandon Finney right now, I'd be really pissed at me. People got to understand... when talking to me, and it'll frustrate you, I don't like not liking people. Same. I try to find the good in everybody. I'd be telling you like Hitler combed his hair well or something. I don't know. I just don't like being negative. There's a few people I don't care if I am, and Coolnell's one of them, and Carol Moore's another. But other people I really, there's been too many people I've been enemies with and then best friends with. It's people, you know. So it's hard to know where to start here, and this is why I'm looking at the audience comments as well. Let me start by saying why blanket. Okay, going to preface this, and again, you'll not offend me with anything you say, and hopefully I won't offend you. You know, I don't think what you're proposing is in fact libertarian socialism. I think it's something else. I call it voluntary communitarianism. And I have no problem with that. I'm actually quite attracted to that. So when I use the word socialism, I'm not talking about what you believe. But as you said, Karl Hess also called himself a libertarian socialist. So when I use the word socialism now, it's always going to be negative, but it's not about you. The reason why I told Shipley and crew that socialism is incompatible with the Libertarian Party, and I get very frustrated even by fellow libertarians who say, well, as long as everything's voluntary, there's no problem. I think libertarians don't think deeply enough about the NAP, and it comes back to the NAP. The NAP, and people can swallow their tongue with me saying this, the NAP by itself is meaningless. It's a floating abstraction. The NAP is only meaningful in a context of property rights. If I'm holding this and you come and take it from me, have you committed aggression? If they're mine, you have. But if you're just taking back your own glasses, you haven't. So without knowing who owns this, we can't know if there's been aggression.
Sure.
So the lip socks define property differently. I agree within their system, there is no aggression because they all agree on a certain thing of property rights. But that theory of property rights, while internally consistent with them, is absolutely incompatible with the Libertarians' party of property rights. So when we went, that whole NOLA Accord thing that tried to happen in Orlando, they were trying to make it just about economic systems, and it's not. It really is about property rights. And you can't even just say, well, we all agree on property rights. You have to define that. See, here's the thing about non-aggression. And when I was a new libertarian, I thought all I had to say was nap, 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 non-aggression. And then, you know, somebody older and wiser in the party said to me, do you think people who disagree with you think that they're being aggressors? And I was like, no, they probably don't. Why don't they? Because they're coming from a different grounding. No one thinks they're an aggressor.
Of course.
So you have to get back to first principles. So when you and I first talked, and you always got to jump in when you want to because I'm...
Of course, of course.
Okay. When you and I first talked, I just started asking you about property rights. And it seemed what you and I agreed upon is that there's a certain, like, I compared it, I'm a pacifist. That doesn't mean I don't have the right to self-defense. I have that right, but I voluntarily give it up. And that's kind of how I see your view in a way, that you see that people can voluntarily get together and communally agree to share and reciprocate rights, that there's no right to demand it, but you can voluntarily enter into a community with people.
Absolutely. There were people who came after the Soviet Union, you know, like Mikhail Bakunin wrote that, like, you know, he'd seen the terrors, what happened under Stalin and Lenin, and he was like, dude, like, okay, so what we want isn't a centralized authoritarian command economy. We want spontaneous organization of worker communities. We want people to voluntarily participate. We're not going to come and steal anything from anyone. So that's essentially what renders a more modern version of socialism compatible with libertarianism. I understand why people react hard, because they think of Mao, they think of Stalin, and that is, you know, those are our enemies too. They run us over with tanks. In the Czech Republic, when they tried to stand up to the Soviet Union, and they said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to have democracy. We're going to have freedom of speech and freedom of the press, and we're going to try a new kind of socialism. We're not going to be bound by the rules of the Soviet Union anymore. And the Soviet Union said, fuck you. And they sent in a bunch of tanks, and they crushed everybody who rebelled. So, I mean, there's a very anarchist left that really doesn't get talked about much, and I do think they're valuable allies.
Oh, I don't disagree with you, but there's a point where there's a point at which the line, like with the right, becomes no longer useful, and there's also a point at which the line with the left becomes no longer useful. And so my question always to Shipley and crew was, and why I say to them, you're lying to the people in New Orleans, not you. them. It's not about a voluntary, it's not about an economic system. Let's say we had your Libertopia. What if I wanted to rent out my house? And I found somebody who wanted it.
I think you should be allowed to. Look, that whole rent is theft thing, I've fought back against it publicly, because when Benjamin Tucker described rent-seeking behavior, he was talking about people who were mooching from the economy without contributing anything themselves. It doesn't literally mean that every instance of a person who owns land, voluntarily having a transaction with someone else, not all of that is theft. In fact, it's beneficial. I, as a young man, have benefited from low rent in certain places. Instead of buying a house, I could wander around and travel and do fun things. So, no, I think that's a horrible argument. And it's interesting, you point out that the NAP isn't the beginning of libertarianism, and I think you're right. There's an important predicate to the non-aggression principle, which is you have to accept that you own yourself. And if you accept,
but that's property rights.
Exactly. And here's the thing: the left and the right just have kind of different theories of property rights, but they both, in the libertarian sense, they both affirm self-ownership. So from there, we're just quibbling about what can we own apart from ourselves. And there are some people like Georges who think like, hey, you can own all the private property you want, but land should be held commonly because land is a finite resource and it kind of belongs to everyone. I'm not a Georgist, but I'm sympathetic to those arguments. Likewise, when people say like water and natural resources and forestry, like all these should belong to people and not to private entities, I'm sympathetic to that. And on small regional levels, I think that that can be valuable. But I certainly am not one of those people who says abolish all private property.
And some of them are.
Yeah.
And that's where the line is drawn. When you had that guy, I can't remember his name. He's another one that'll be on block forever. Dan Posner, I think is his name, walking around the Libertarian Party with a communist flag. Come on, dude.
Well, I have my disagreements. It's kind of like we talked about Shipley. I have a lot of disagreements with Mr. Posner, but I think he's actually like a really nice guy. Like we've had some good discussions, and yeah, he's way farther left than myself. I'm a moderate compared to him.
Yeah, I don't know him that well, so I could be most people I think are good people. So I just think that was rude. Coming to a Libertarian Party convention would come. It'd be like going to Black Lives rally with KKK or Caryn Ann or something. It's rude. I mean, it's manners. It's like, come on, didn't your mom teach you nothing? So when you and I talked, the sense I got, because we connected, was that it was almost between the brutalist view and the humanitarian view, rather than between right and left. And I think that's, and going back in party history, when they talked, like David Nolan clearly said, and I would have brought out all the crap, but we're not in a combative thing. David Nolan started getting attacked in the very beginning. This is like an issue 5 or so of LP News, where people started freaking the hell out on him because he said, we want to appeal to the libertarian left. And he thought, and they asked him, is that socialist and communist? And this is what David said, and I think he was a bit naive in his language, and I think we're a bit naive in even using the left and right terminology. I don't use it anymore. He said, no, when I say appeal to the left, I'm only talking about social issues. And when I say appeal to the right, I'm only talking about property issues. Well, you just confused the hell out of everybody.
Yeah.
But, and also it grants some idea that property rights only belong to the right and that caring about people only belongs to the left. And that's just not the case.
Yeah.
So like when for one thing, I'm very attracted to voluntary communitarianism. If I wasn't married, I probably would live in that type of arrangement. I think I talked to you about the co-housing thing that I was very interested in Florida, particularly as a single woman. In Libertopia, you got to protect your own damn self, and to do that, you have to band up with other people.
Absolutely.
Now, to the big burly guys, yeah, going out and just them in the land, that sounds wonderful. And the reason why their libertarianism isn't appealing to other people, because women know that they couldn't live like that, and you couldn't raise small children like that. You know, it's the brutalist view, where all they care about is me, my gun, and my right to say I don't like gay people. I don't want to bake them a cake.
Yeah.
To them, that's the be all and end all. And to me, it's not. To me, a libertarian society could be a nightmare. It could be a bunch of racists just being dicks to each other, but no force. You want to know something? Some of the worst things that have happened to me in life haven't been violations against me against force. It's been people just being assholes.
Yeah.
And that's not aggression. And Shipley's gone off the deep
Words
end
are not violence.
Right. So I think libertarianism is a necessary but not a sufficient cause for human flourishing.
Certainly. And further, I believe you and I both share in a common philosophy. We're both anarchists to some extent. And my understanding of an anarchist society or an anarchist world, you know, post-revolution, all governments are gone, we've achieved it. People are still going to self-select into different economic systems. You're going to have people who want to go be Georgists. You're going to have hardline capitalists who want nothing but 100% private property. You're going to have voluntary communities pop up that want to, you know, be self-sufficient and grow their own food. And my understanding is that all of these should be free to their own economic self-determination. And further, they should benefit from trade on a broader free market. That is to say that, you know, Ann Cambodia and Ancapistan can totally trade whatever products they make well and benefit from each other. You know, do what they do best, specialize, and there's no reason to hate one another.
Here's where the rubber meets the road, though. And sometimes it's hard for me to get to this point. And I think you see it, and not everyone sees it yet. And it's not because any of us are smart, or it's just I spend way too much time thinking about stupid shit.
Agreed.
There has to be a fundamental truth of what property rights are. And while, and we got this in the conversation, the other thread the other day when I said, well, what happens when so-and-so isn't consenting anymore?
Agreed.
The whole idea of consent, though, presupposes a fundamental truth. So let's say that you and I agree for some reason that this soda is a scarce resource, and we're in a community where we all share this soda, but I'm the one who brought it to the community. I bought it. I went to the 7-Eleven and I bought it, but I'm like, I'm going to share it with all you guys. I think that's right. But overnight, I decide it's not anymore. And I want to take my soda and go home. What happens to me? And if your theory was this soda, I wasn't sharing it to you out of me just voluntarily giving you something. You have a right to this soda.
Mm.
And then if you have a right to it, you have every right to keep me from leaving with it. So this is what happens, and where people who just say voluntary economic systems aren't thinking about. What if the socialist changes their mind? If they didn't sign a contract or anything, just talking about, you know, whatever, can they start acting like a capitalist, or would the society around them be justified in committing violence again? If their theory of property rights is correct, see, in Matt Coolner's truth, he is absolutely justified for saying landlords get the wall.
Sure. He wants to seize the means. I don't. And I think there's a lot of libsocks who don't. The very moment you revoke consent, if you come to my little commune and you're loving it for a while, but then all of a sudden you find that you have some property you don't want to share, you want to get the hell out of there, that's your right. No one is justified using violence against you, ever. I mean, that's the whole point of being a libsock. It's a rejection of coercion. If you don't want to be there, you shouldn't be forced.
You're a communitarian, dude.
Well, and here's the thing. You know that people on the left say that you guys aren't capitalists. My friends on the left who get on with ANCAPs are like, oh, well, they're not really capitalists because capitalism presupposes a system of violence enforced by the state that holds up property rights. That essentially their theory of property can only be maintained under an authoritarian government. And likewise, my friends on the right say the same thing about the left. They're like, your theory of property can only be maintained under an authoritarian government. And the thing is, I love ANCAPs, I love libsocks, and they both say the opposite. They're like, no, we don't need a government. We can voluntarily participate in a community of our choosing.
It drives me crazy, actually. I get frustrated a lot with my fellow ANCAPs. I grimace when people say there's no such thing as a libertarian socialist. It really just drives me crazy because, listen, I make a lot of religious analogies because I come from a very religious background, and I'm done apologizing for that. Not to you, but just in general.
No.
And I used to get very deeply into apologetics. But there are some real surface level Christians who think they could just quote this one verse and they've just defeated the world. And I said, one good Jehovah's Witness is going to put you into a pretzel. And I say the same thing with a lot of ANCAPs. One good socialist is going to put you into a pretzel because you're ignorant. Libertarian socialism came first. Who cares? But that's the truth. I care about history. There was a rift. There was a rift between European and American. And if you refuse to acknowledge that, the stupidest thing anyone could ever say is, oh, you're a libertarian socialist, I'm a banana octopus. You're just a moron, the people who say that.
Well, and further,
they don't know history.
You're exactly right. They're missing the historical context. In fact, in the 70s, it was Robert Lefebvre and Murray Rothbard split. The East Coast libertarians went in a more right-leaning direction. The West Coast libertarians went in a more like anti-statist, leftist direction. And the thing is, they both had very different strategies. And Murray Rothbard and his folks tried to engage in the political process and to put out all these ideas. And then the folks in California, they got into their little communes and they refused to vote and they became very anarchist. And on their own, neither won. Nobody was very effective. We didn't win the day. Libertarianism didn't take over the world. And I think that's because we isolated ourselves, because we separated into these camps. I'm on this little team. You know, we're all libertarians.
That's why I won't use right and left anymore.
Yeah.
I won't use right and left anymore. But what's funny, what I was going to tell you, the other thing that drives me crazy about ANCAPs is where they say there's no such thing as stateless socialism. And I'm even talking about the socialism that I don't agree with, not your kind. There's no such thing as stateless socialism. You have to have a state to enforce it. And I'm like, are you being an idiot? Same argument can be made about, if that is true, then a state is necessary for capitalism. But the fact is, no matter what theory you have, in order to make sure rights are honored, always is going to, it doesn't require a government, but it does require force. What makes you think the government's required for force? They're conflating government with enforcement.
Yeah.
Yes, a socialist society will require enforcement, no doubt. A capitalist society will require enforcement. Every society requires, and it doesn't require a state. And I don't like using the word government either, because I think government is inevitable, but I'm defining maybe government differently. Government's just the way people order themselves and the way they have an orderly society. State is when it's seized and they become your overlord and they claim a monopoly and say you can't break off,
Yeah.
type of thing. So I'm anti-state, but I'm not anti-government. And I think a lot of male ANCAPs miss this too and wonder, why aren't they more popular amongst women? They don't put themselves, listen, in a completely governmentless society, I'd be dead in 2 days. That's not attractive to me.
Well,
most men would be too, but they don't think they would.
It's worth pointing out. I mean, if you believe in free markets, every time there's been a revolution, people have built another government. That is to say, they want it. They will make a government for themselves.
Well, you have to. You have to have an orderly way of, I mean, even in your own household, there's a form of government.
Sure.
You all know who's responsible for what, and you air your grievances. A family is a form of government. And again, a church even calls themselves church government. And they have their own internal justice system, which is church discipline. So there are many, government is inevitable and government is not bad. Government is where, so everyone knows the rules. Government's like traffic lights. Don't you like knowing when you should go and when you should stop?
I don't know that government, I believe government is inherently bad. In a sense, any institution which privileges one individual with authority over another will always be bad. And so the only way that I can come around to accepting government is so long as it's bound to the will of the people, as long as it's, you know, a minarchist state, something that can't expand beyond the control of the people who built it. That's inoffensive.
I'm sure, though, you've read, even though I would love to know why he apostatized in later life, Roy Child's, his essay to Ayn Rand, how that there is no, she posited, and this is the ultimate debate within libertarianism. I'm obviously going to tell you my opinion, but the party takes no stance on it. He's like, you're telling me that you believe in choice and you believe in consent and you believe in, no force. Okay, you have your little minarchist state. I live here. I don't want to commit force against you, but I want to set up my own little government here. Will you use force to stop me? And if so, what rights of yours have I violated that you can use for? Minarchism, by its very nature, violates rights. That's my opinion. I know plenty of, I don't care to argue about it. We're so far from that. And as I say to people, if we got to minarchy, I'd find a new hobby. I'd sew again.
Agreed.
You know,
Agreed.
If this is all brain food and navel gazing, really.
And that's one of the reasons I can still justify, like, deep under all my anti-statism is, like, I was raised by a veteran and I still have that red, white, and blue patriotism somewhere deep down in there. And I can reconcile that because America, while it's kind of lost its way somewhat, it was founded on the principles of minarchy. It was the first attempt on the planet to limit the power of the state, not to build something invincible and expansionist, but to build something that would forever be held to the tiniest responsibilities.
It was astounding what they came up with at the time.
Yeah.
We don't realize it. It was absolutely astounding what they came up with. No, I would have liked more, but you're talking about in a time of kings.
Yeah.
You know?
And from the beginning, there were folks who recognized, you know, slavery was contrary to these beliefs. Like right from the beginning, there was an abolitionist movement. So I don't have any problem with referencing the Constitution. It's not a big deal to me. I operate as a minarchist in the real world. I mean, in my heart, I think that this is all fucked up. But dude, I ran for office. You know, I vote. It's self-defense.
I'm gonna run for office. Well, yeah, and we get the anarchists who go, "Oh, you're not a real anarchist because you."
Yeah, right. Exactly.
You know, I don't care. I'll sleep. That's what I say. I'll survive. You don't think I'm a real anarchist? I'll survive. That's okay. That's real sweet.
I tell you, I can only do the best that I can. And the truth is, if you look at the people look at me in the streets and they disregard me, they don't give a fuck how many books I've read or what I think or what I say. But the moment I run for office, people are pointing cameras at me. People want to know what I'm about. So I'm using this system. I think it's corrupt. I don't want to participate, but here it is. I'm going to break it from within.
I compare it to a computer virus. You got to get in it.
Yeah.
To start to wreak a little mayhem, right? And I mean it in a peaceful way. Peaceful mayhem. I wanted to see if anyone at first, because I had some other directions to go in, but I wanted to see if anyone, I'm going to flip back through comments, but if I missed something, you guys, if you want to ask a question to either of us, please do. We need more of these ironic discussions. But the big problem here again is I really do think they're riding in on the coattails of people like you, and I'm sure some people are going to see the headline to this and think, oh my God, she sold out. No, it's just that words aren't magic. They're not mad. I don't like labels so much. They're helpful to give you a 1 second abbreviation of what people think, but it's not complete. Sure. So, you know, because the outside world hears anarchist and they think that's why I bought the shirt. It's a joke. It says, yes, I'm an anarchist. No, I don't want to blow shit up. Because that's what they think, right?
And I understand the misconception. Socialism is a loaded term. There's an understanding in the American vocabulary that, you know, it makes it pretty. The reason I insist on the term and the reason I deal with all the hate and all the crap I get online for it is because there are good libsocks. And because they're not the noisiest, like they're a minority, you know, there's only a couple of them. And not every one of them is big and loud and obnoxious like Kino. Like most of them are just good people who you're going to find very inoffensive, but they feel a little bit persecuted when they see large movements stepping up and saying, no unity with socialists. I'm like, well, let's tone it down, guys. It's too hostile on both sides. Like, there's no reason to come at it all hard. There's like 12 of them. They're really nice people, and they're not all Matt Keenel. I got to communicate that.
Yeah. You know, I try to find out now, ever since meeting you, what's your view on property rights? Get past the label. What's your view on property rights? But I will stand till the last day with my last breath to say, no unity with those who have different property rights, because they're advocating violence.
Yeah, they are.
And they shouldn't want unity with me, because what I would want to do, they would consider violence.
And that's why I haven't participated in the Libsoc caucus at all. I mean, look, I don't believe in caucuses. It's like you say, like the team sports is not productive. It's all people fighting each other when we should be friends. But while I had a lot of high hopes for it, it's like they were infiltrated by a top left group. There were people who were not interested in the promotion of the LP. They just wanted to bring, you know, authoritarian leftist talking points to our conventions and to our meetings. And I hated that invasion too. So I couldn't reconcile my beliefs with that caucus. So I mean, I hope the best for them. There's a lot of good people in there, but I mean, I can't even hang out with those guys.
Well, here's where I think the dividing line is, and see if you agree. A, it's property rights. B, it's on whether the means of production. You know, can I legitimately own the means of production? Can I have employees? Blah blah blah. We can, like, where Shipley comes at it, where I think people don't listen to him. Shipley, I don't think denies that. But I think he says when everyone's getting along, no one will want to do that. That's fine. I have no problem with that. Kunal wasn't saying that. People don't, Shipley puts too much, he does word salads and then people don't listen to what he has to say. Me personally, I just got off track a little bit here. So can individuals own the means of production? Are words violence? Because that's become a big division. And equality of opportunity or equality of outcome. See, the French Revolution was a libertarian revolution, but it was for equality of outcome.
Right.
That's a different theory of libertarianism, but it is a long-standing theory.
I don't suspect that equality of outcome is actually compatible with libertarianism, because it denies your right to autonomy, your right to determine. Like, look, there's people who want to get up in the morning and bust their ass like Elon Musk and shoot cars into space, and then there's dudes like me who want to smoke and play my guitar and like pet a dog on the boardwalk. Like, I'm a peaceful, slow guy. I want to do work, but I want it all to be towards like my beliefs, and I'm not going to work as hard as some people. I don't want a mansion. I don't want a Ferrari. People should be allowed to go and earn whatever they want in life. I want them all to be clothed and fed and to have shelter and to not starve to death in the streets. But no, equality of outcome is not very libertarian to me.
But this is where I start to see the clash now, though. And it's even in our common culture. That's what people are clamoring for, is equality of outcome. That's what the modern feminist movement is all about, and why I don't call myself a feminist, even though I'm obviously a very strong, belligerent, whatever, aggressive woman. But I don't want, I find it very belittling, this thing,
Yeah.
So, and sometimes in words with people like Shipley, though, they're starting to lean towards equality of outcome. And that's a big dividing line right there.
Yeah.
But I think where you're coming from, and I don't want to speak for you, but where I'm coming from and where I think we resonate is, I went through the brutalist phase, when you first discover libertarianism and it's all new and exciting, and you want to argue about whether you could have a voluntary slave contract or not and all that other bullshit. Those days, the cage stage. And this was the problem I had with Arvin. Like, Arvin to me is still in the cage stage. To me, I don't want to live in that world. And libertarianism has to have a heart, or it's a cold sausage. It's just...
Well, and that's an important thing to point out, is that libertarians outside our little echo chambers, people look at us and think you are, tools of corporations, you're heartless, you have no compassion, and that is not consistent with what I know. Libertarians who spend their weekends, volunteering to feed homeless people. Like, I know libertarians who give their own resources to help local initiatives. So we have this illusion that we're not compassionate, but I think we need to overcome that. Libertarian socialists might be valuable in that respect. I would point to a policy. Now, this guy is not a libsoc, but are you familiar with Zoltan Istvan from California? When he ran for governor.
Yeah, I love his name. Zoltan.
He's awesome, man. He's a really nice guy, really forward-thinking, and he proposed something called a federal land dividend. About 50% of the land in California is unused. It's just empty, and it's held by the federal government. And his proposition is perfectly compatible with my philosophy. It's that land belongs to the people. We should monetize it, lease it out to private businesses, and use that money to fund something similar to a UBI. So what you have here is a system that doesn't rely on taxes. It's a free market solution, and it essentially abolishes the welfare state while helping poor people in California. It does everything a libertarian would want. I think solutions like that are going to come from more left-leaning thinkers, and we got to be open to ideas that will kind of get us where we want to go.
Yeah. Well, I don't agree with him on that. I do grok the point, and I think I do, because I represented Alaska as Region 1, and they have their the oil thing. They get a dividend. I forget what it's called. There's a certain word for it. Someone in chat will be able to remember. And Archie, the word I used when I said a type of debate, I said irenic. I don't know if that's a word that a lot of people just don't use. I found out that I just tend to use a lot of words that people don't use, and it means amiable. If you read the oh shit, I'm getting too old. The book with the in Chicago with the clans. What was that? And there was the Amity and whatever. Discordant, something like that. It was a young adult, but I forget it. I'm super getting old now. So in a way, I think you and I actually think the same. Like, I'd be pretty happy on a hippie commune.
I've lived that way before. As a matter of fact, I spent a lot of time in Vegas where it was from each according to ability to each according to need. Some of us had money because we worked and we bought the food. Some of us were just able to bust missions. So we walked long trips and got supplies, and like we would maintain houses full of otherwise homeless individuals who would band together and live a better life because of that teamwork. It was voluntary. No one was coerced into participating, and we all benefited. And as soon as someone was strong enough to stand on their own, they could leave and go and do it as whatever they want, go become a capitalist. Like what I see value in any voluntary system that helps people to rise out of poverty.
Yeah. So do you agree on the few things I said about dividing lines?
Absolutely.
Where I said, yeah, those are the things that I say that people, it's not compatible with the Libertarian Party. And I don't say that to be mean. Some people, I think I'm like missing, there's a social dysfunction somewhere, which I just don't get. And it's obviously a problem with me and not a problem with everybody else, is I don't take things like this personally. Yeah. But some people, if you tell them they are not X, they act like you ran over their fucking dog.
Yeah. People, it's built into the language. Consider, you don't say, I believe in libertarianism. You say, I am a libertarian. And so if somebody assaults those beliefs, you feel personally attacked. It's an assault on you, not just on a word or a thought. I got friends like Joshua Smith, friend of mine, and he's told me a million times in debates publicly, you're not a libsoc. There's no such thing as a libsoc. You're a confused capitalist.
I tell you that.
I don't, and I don't agree, but I don't take it personally. I'm not going, what, you don't think I exist? Like, it's just, yeah. We use different words, and we got to be able to talk to people. We have to get over this stuff. It's not really important.
Yeah, and people really get way too hung up on words, and I learned that I've written a book, which a lot of people don't know, but it's in Christian theology, but it was about the end of the world predictions, and if you've ever seen that Tim LaHaye movie Left Behind, they take every word literally and they come up with this weird wacky shit, and they go, but that's what it says. I go, it doesn't. What it says isn't important. What it means is important. Who cares what it says? It's meant to convey a meaning. If you told me it was raining cats and dogs outside and I grabbed a kennel, I would not be hearing what you meant, but I would hear what you said. Big difference. Yeah. And I think we're doing that a bit here. Not you and I, but it could have went that way. And I saw it going that way with you and Benjamin. Not due to you. And I love Benjamin.
May I say, I have no beef with him. I feel an obligation. I feel an obligation to fight back against these ideas. When I see people saying things that are very, aggressive against libsocs, I kind of feel an obligation to stand up for them. I got a lot of friends in those circles, but it ain't personal. We're just kind of trolling each other online right now, but I'll bet he's a nice guy, and I'll bet if we sat down and talked without the buzzwords, he'd probably agree with a lot of what I have to say too. So no hard feelings, Benjamin.
He would. But I'm very hardcore when it comes to this is, and I always say Libertarian Party, libertarianism, because there's a lot of different varieties. And too many people in the party don't want to recognize that because they take it personal. If they are going to admit that there was European libertarian communism, it's like they would melt, like, like that's an assault on them, and they're no.
And isn't live and let live kind of our thing? Like, what does it bother you if people want to go over there and do something? And even if you think they're going to go starve, I mean, that's their right. Let them do it. Let them go have a bad system, and they will serve as further evidence of your point that socialism won't work. I suspect that there are all kinds of different things that could be tried that might surprise us, and I want to see everybody have the right to experiment.
Well, I saw in here in chat earlier, and this is. We were sticking mostly to the LP. I'm going to stray a little bit outside the LP.
Sure.
Because I'm a much more not as quite as rigid. With the LP means something. Mm-hmm. So if you ever see me going like that, it's because I get the notifications. I'm not going passively aggressively.
And I share you. Believe me, I believe in the LP. I'm very active with the state. I'm active in I'm the regional chair. I'm the vice chair for my county. I believe in the party, and I would not do anything that I thought would endanger our principles.
Yeah, so I'm very passionate about the principles now, but stepping outside of that, earlier in this conversation, someone mentioned panarchy. Now that's an entirely different thing. And in panarchy, the Shipley, whatever, that would be there too. But the problem then becomes when someone wants to leave that society, and I think it ends up being just as totalitarian. If their version of property rights is true, any of us capitalists are committing violence against them. And that's where the fundamental difference comes in. And I just think there's a lot of shallowness on my people's part, the people who agree with me normally's part. And they just repeat the same thing over and over without getting to what it means. And it's going to serve them wrong, because they're going to convince a bunch of people, yeah, these guys are a bunch of baddies. And then once they figure out they really aren't, they're going to think you lied to them about everything. Yeah. Which is why I don't like soft selling libertarianism. People aren't stupid. They're going to find out eventually that you sold them a bill of goods. Why do you act like all we want to do, not you, but in general, us? Why do we act like all we want to do is legalize pot? You don't think they're going to figure it out?
There's more to it than that.
Yeah. I mean, you might not want to, oh, you're going to laugh at what Facebook, I'm going to do this just to screw with somebody. There's a good friend of mine in Colorado that you look just like.
Oh, no way.
His name is Seth Ryan Levy. And Facebook just prompted me, do you want to tag Seth Ryan Levy in this video? So I just tagged him. So he's going to go, what the hell?
I'm sorry, Seth. My apologies, bro.
Yeah. He's a great guy. If you don't know him, he works with Our America Initiative.
Oh, nice.
You know, yeah. So he did a lot of that. What direction? I mean, I said almost everything. Like, I wanted to get out, and I think the audience is like on board.
Yeah, right.
There's no argument. Was there any other angles you had wanted to explore, or anything else? You know, I'm open to anything. I love the friendly discussion, and even things we don't agree with. That's fine. I'll never take it personally, and I don't think you will. Part of the problem is when people do take it personally, and that's unfortunate.
Absolutely. And look, I can't speak for everybody. I can't speak for the right any better than I can speak for the left. But what I'd say is that there's a lot of good people in both of those crowds, and just, you know, have your ears open. Be welcome a conversation with someone who disagrees with you. I'm sure Caryn Ann and I don't agree on everything, but obviously we don't hate each other, and we're largely working for the same thing.
I haven't found what we disagree on yet, though.
Yeah, you know, you're actually way more sympathetic to my position than I'd originally thought you would be.
Well, it's because, you know, if you listen to Shipley, I'm a closet Republican. The fact is, I'm left of center.
I'll tell you where we disagree on something. I regard myself as an atheist or an agnostic, but I don't have any trouble using biblical language. It's part of the culture, and in fact, I think there's a lot of anarchist themes. I referenced the story of Gideon, who led the Jews in this crazy battle, and like they won, and they wanted to make him a king, and he rejected it, not just because he didn't want to be king, but because he thought nobody had the right to name a king. Now, his justification was God is king and he's your only... That's cool. I don't need that justification. I still think it's a beautiful story. I can still, you know, speak to people's hearts, meet them where they are. Don't hate people. If somebody's religious, welcome them. If somebody's on the left, welcome them. Like, you know, we're all libertarians.
I watch a lot of YouTube. I don't watch any libertarians. I watch almost all either SJWs, alt-right, and atheists, because I want to hear people I don't agree with. But the thing is, if I can easily put myself, listen, I went through a whole crisis of faith. I'm not the Christian I used to be. I come from a fundamentalist background. I very easily could have walked away and ended up atheist. And a lot of Christians say I'm not a Christian, and I don't care, because I'm very liberal Christian. You know, I don't have a problem with gay people and whatever. And that isn't how I was raised in the faith. Very fundamentalist, you know, and I'm absolutely mortified by some of the things I used to believe. But if atheism is correct, I could easily see myself going into an atheist view and saying, well, these wonderful stories are our history. So they're at least archetypes, and they're lessons. They don't have to be God things. So that's why it puzzles me when people get so upset, and they have been lately, when I quote Proverbs. You got to bring the Bible. I'm not bringing, though. I'm just bringing wisdom. And if I knew the Quran as well, I'm sure there's about 20 things I could quote from there, because there's wisdom in every religion. I mean, I think they're all right. Obviously, I'm a Christian, but that's how people figured out the world, to get so triggered, you know.
Look, I used to be very Richard Dawkinsy when I was like 18, 19. I was really one of those, like, I want all the religion gone from the world. It's evil and horrible. But look, as I've grown up and as I've, you know, evolved in this movement, my girlfriend is a Christian, a devout Christian. Some of my very best friends, the people I respect most in this movement, are very faithful. And we don't see eye to eye on that, but they're wonderful folks. Why should I hate them? Why should I wish for something that they find valuable in determining how to live their lives? Why should I tell them what to do? You know?
Well, because sometimes they want to be putting things on other people.
Sure,
but that's different.
I don't like that much either, but.
Well, you know, and that's not because they're religious. People who want to do that would find another excuse for it. You know, my pastor once said, you know, when you become a Christian, if he didn't say asshole, but I will, it doesn't make you no longer an asshole. It just makes you an asshole with a Bible. And so, you know, little tyrants will use whatever. I went to a town council meeting this week, and I was like, oh my God, bunch of little tyrants there. It's not, you know, they'll find any excuse.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's not religion. That's just man. But I will admit with the atheists, or concede to the atheist point, it is, I think, a whole lot more damaging when you're being your little tyrant to say God said,
yeah,
rather than I just think so, or my favorite philosopher did. There is kind of a mind trip there. I get it. You know, I get it, because I come out of that. I was 20 years in a not good marriage because you just didn't get divorced.
Yeah.
That was, and I went through clinical depression, and you had to pray it away. And that's bad. You know, I've come from a very bad spot. And the thing that turned me from wasn't even only that. The final straw for me, and I say this to Christians all the time, I'm probably going to get a lot of people mad here. When in the Old Testament, where they talked about if someone was blaspheming God, that, you know, you take up the stones to stone them. Would you do that? I couldn't.
Yeah, me neither.
And it's so easy to talk about in theory, and we don't put ourselves in that position. I wouldn't. I'd be the person throwing myself on the person to protect them. And that's when I could no longer take it like that anymore, because I just couldn't. Now, how do I reconcile my belief in God? Whatever. You know what? I don't have to. I know what I know and what I sense. Maybe it's more spirituality. I don't know. And I just don't worry about it anymore. But there are, you know, so I don't even think we even disagree all that much there, to be honest with you, because I'm a very non-assuming Christian now. It's just like.
Well, the interesting thing is, like, the more you get into science and the more you study, like, this notion of particles popping in and out of existence, and how most of the stuff in the universe is stuff we can't measure or see, it's like, whoa, what do we really know anyway? We are not that smart. If multiverse theory is true, there's infinite copies of the universe out there. So maybe there's one where there's a God and one where there's not, and one where there's lizard people, and Alex Jones is still on YouTube. Like, what do I know? I'm dumb.
And the frogs aren't gay.
I'm just a dumb monkey like you, man. We're all fucking trying to figure this out.
You want to know what blew my mind? We're getting into science a little bit here. What blew my mind wasn't really the particle stuff. I kind of dismissed that because it was just so weird. And now, you know. But epigenetics. That right there, I think, solves so many different things. Because the problem was, like, if you, I don't know, you had some kind of injury that made you more compatible, that doesn't get passed on because it's something that happened after you were born. But epigenetics says it could be. It could be passed on, alters your genes after the fact. So, and that makes evolution wide open.
Sure. And I'm of the opinion, I'm a transhumanist. I'm of the opinion that we've already altered the course of evolution artificially through everything. And not a day goes by we don't wear shoes to make our feet harder. We don't, you know, we transfer ideas electronically at the speed of light in such a way that we're all interconnected. I think we're evolving artificially. We're building ourselves into some new level of human. It's going to be crazy in the future when we can all just, like, send thoughts to each other and stuff.
I agree with you, but okay. Yes, I do have these conversations when I'm not on Facebook. My husband and I were lying in bed this morning, and we had a conversation about Neanderthals, because I'm going to get my DNA tested because I don't know who my father is, blah, 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 blah. And I said, but they'll also tell you how much Neanderthal DNA you have. He's like, what? I go, you didn't know that there was crossbreeding, and it was two competing. You were able to interbreed, but it was competitive. Yeah. And arguably Neanderthals were smarter. They had bigger brains, but it wasn't it wasn't adaptive then. To be a big lumbering, you had to have the right ratio between brain size and swiftness and agility and stuff like that. But Neanderthals today would probably be kicking our ass on everything because we've created technology to protect us. We don't need our teeth and our claws. Yep. You know, people don't realize how miserable most of human existence was.
And how soft and squishy we've become.
Yeah. You know, and when we get into the women's rights things too, people want to look on the past. I go, you need to let the past be the past. You can't judge. You can say some things are wrong, but be careful, because this happened a lot in my historical discussions about ancient Rome. You got to let the Romans be the Romans. It was different then.
Yeah.
The past is like who is it that said the past is like a foreign country? People do things differently there. And we tend today to not do that. So we'll look back on some of the things the founding fathers did, and it's just problematic. But listen, most of us, and most people aren't honest enough to admit them to themselves. Most of us, if we were born in the Deep South during the time of slavery, we probably wouldn't have said a word, because that was our normal. It takes something extra to step out of that. Hey, how many of us now we think the state is evil? I just came to that conclusion 4 years ago. I wasn't a bad person for the first 45 years when I voted to commit violence against people, you know. And most of us, we probably would have been kind to our slaves, but I bet you most of us wouldn't have said a thing, because that would have been our normal, and that's what you were taught. And they said God said it. Which, you know, it's a whole other problem.
And it's worth it to take the good stuff from a thinker and leave the bad stuff. Look, I quoted a man earlier in our discussion, Mikhail Bakunin. You know what? The man was an anti-Semite. Okay, he hated. I'm Jewish. Like he wouldn't have liked me none. But the fact is, like, I read his writings about liberty and about how he reconciles socialism with liberty, and I think those are valuable. And I can leave all the anti-Jew stuff and say that's just, you know, awful. I don't need that. But all thinkers are like that. There's a lot of thinkers who have some good stuff and some bad stuff.
Where I think we, as a party or as a people type of thing, we need to get better at, and again, this always baffles me, is to be able to listen. No, I joke. I say first, I always start with this. Nobody's 100% pure, and then I go, well, I am, but obviously I'm not. Nobody, and who cares? So why do we have to make us like the level of libertarianism? Why does it have to be everything that we believe is perfect libertarianism? Why can't you say, I don't agree with the party there? When have we become incapable of that?
Yeah.
You know, and I have to do it all the time with the abortion plan. I don't agree. I think the party's wrong. I don't agree with them there. I don't think they are as wrong as I used to think, because I've come to the position that I don't want the state involved. Yeah. But and actually, our abortion plan says a lot less than people think it says. It's actually not quite as bad as a lot of pro-lifers say, because it doesn't say there's a right to anything. It just says the government fucks everything.
Yeah, it says everybody in this discussion is a good person, and we just don't want to tell anyone with the government what to do.
Right. And if the pro-lifers were actually dead wrong and opposed to libertarianism, would you call them good people? No. We wouldn't say that to any other aggression, but we do on our platform. I still think it should be deleted because it says nothing. It's what a weenie statement. But just when it comes to that, I don't, even if I don't want the state to enforce it, I do think there comes a point in a pregnancy where you don't have the right to throw out that baby.
I agree.
Or fetus or whatever. I don't. But earlier, it's kind of like my pacifism. I couldn't. I did when I was young. I've had 2 abortions and I regret them. But it's like my pacifism. I won't defend myself lethally, but can I really tell you that you can't? Even if you're a Christian, because my views on pacifism have nothing to do with politics. It's strictly religious. I think the Quakers are right. I think that the Quakers actually are right on a lot of things, that Christians would be doing a lot better if they were a lot less like Sarah Palin and a lot more like Quakers, without all the quaking. None of that. But the egalitarianism, the peaceful, the community, they were quite communitarian, or socialist, as you would say, right? And you don't know what else people need to stop, though. What is it? God, let me think of a good example. You'll be able to come up with one. When they define things that aren't socialism as socialism, all it is people getting along.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, man.
Oh, I thought you got...
What's an example?
You know, they come up all the time, too. And it's I can't even think of... feeding your kids even once came up and said that was socialism.
Yeah,
socialism.
No. You literally have to think of socialism in terms of shared ownership, community property.
And voluntarily shared.
Yeah.
See, that's the key that I think we need to stress, is that voluntary point. But in order, okay, we're getting here. I own certain things. I don't require your agreement. I own them.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the way it is. That's reality. The people who are putting themselves outside the party are saying, we all own these things. There's no debate about it. That's reality. That's the different theory of property rights.
Yeah.
And I'm going to bring in, you said you were Jewish. Were you raised religious Jewish, or is it family, or your mother was Jewish?
It's complicated.
If I'm getting in your business, just say
no closed doors. My pops was Christian and my mom was Jewish. So the Jews claim me because my mom, but it's like I got both.
Yeah.
And because I was going to synagogue and to church, I kind of got these contradictory lessons that made me question religion entirely. But yeah. Split.
Then you might understand this analogy I'm going to give that usually rings true with a lot of Christians. Do you know the word kenosis?
Mm-mm.
Do you know the doctrine? Okay, well, you know the doctrine of the Trinity. And it's very confusing because it's like, how can Jesus be God and man? You know, kenosis is the theory, and it's like my pacifism, that when, and we could talk about this, I'm not trying to insult anyone who's not religious. We talk about this as mythology. I don't care. It's the theory that when Jesus came to earth, he voluntarily set aside all his prerogatives of deity. No one took it from him. At any moment, he could have picked them back up. But he laid them aside for the entire time, and he always could take them back. That's how I view libertarian socialism that you're describing. I own this. But I can lay it aside. I can lay it aside for my whole life. But I always have the right to take it back up. And that's where I disagree with that group.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. If you can't rescind your consent, your society is not voluntary.
Right. But they say, well, I don't consent to having, but the consent thing again, that's why there has to be an underlying truth, because the thing is, I don't need your consent to the things I actually own.
Sure.
I own them whether you consent or not, because I own them. Like, I own my body whether you consent or not.
Absolutely. That's why I find so much trouble.
Fundamental.
There's so many people who use Locke's theory of property who are like, if you mix your labor with land, it's your land. And I feel like that's insufficient. I really appreciate Nozick. Because he came along and developed entitlement theory, which has like these 3 steps for determining who rightfully owns something, when is it just to like take action to get something back. Like it kind of defines how property works in a real sense that I think could be shared by the left and the right. In their
What book is that in?
Anarchy, State, and Utopia.
He does that in that, because I've read that book and I don't remember, because I'm intrigued. I read Anarchy, State, and Utopia when I was realizing I was an anarchist, and it scared the hell out of me, and I didn't want to be one because I knew it was going to put me on the outside. No one wants to be an outsider. So I read that book because everyone told me, and most of the people who tell you to read that book and it answers all the questions, they haven't read the book. I just know that now. They haven't. So I read the book. It was going to save me. It didn't. It actually made me more convinced. Nozick, he knew what he was doing. Mm-hmm. He covered his tracks pretty well, but he had to redefine state in order to make his state non-coercive. And he even admits that he had to redefine state to make his state non-coercive. And most people don't get, and I'm wondering if you picked up on this too, and if people are getting bored or you're getting bored, you let me know, because I could do this shit forever. But Nozick had, his whole thing with the security was, yes, you have a right to have your own security, but there's going to be a monopolization by nature. There's going to be a natural monopoly. So this company will, or the state in this case, will take it from you, but they're going to compensate you for what they took from you by providing you their services. And that's where the sleight of hand is. That's like saying, I could walk up to you and punch you in the face, but I'm going to give you $100. Don't you feel okay about it then?
Yeah, that's nonsense.
You can't, nobody can decide for me what my rights are worth. Oh, I took away your rights, but I compensated you. No, you didn't. I'd rather have my rights. And it doesn't matter if you think you could give me $1 million and I could still think, no, I'd rather have my rights. And that's the problem with Georgism too, by the way, but that's a whole other thing. But Nozick I find fascinating. So I'm going to have to go look in that again. You know, where he started blowing my mind was with his aliens. You know, when he's like, if they were so much more advanced than us, would they view us like cockroaches and they could step on us? You know, I was just like,
well, he's the one who came up with the experience machine, right? He essentially theorized the Matrix before that movie came. He was a brilliant guy.
But this isn't a but the thing that people, today's libertarians, would really do very well if they understood his, oh shit, my mind's going in again. Constraints. Where he said, is utilitarianism true or is natural rights theory true? They both are.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to have the highest utility. You want to have the most people flourishing, however you define that. But there's constraints to that. And the constraints are the natural rights. So within natural rights, you have about 20 different paths you can choose. Yes, you should choose the one that gives you the most utility. So that's actually what the Radical Caucus believes that people think is so crazy. Well, one of it, because they say natural rights are utilitarian, that doing the right thing will lead to the best, but that's a whole...
You can make either argument. You can make the deontological case that defensive rights is our duty, or you can make the consequentialist argument that it's simply the path to the most prosperity in the world. In either case, it gets us to the same spot.
Yeah. I'm a deontologist, you know, but which is why I can say, because I am, that I can envision a libertarian dystopia, and why I can say libertarianism is necessary but not sufficient.
Sure.
Compassion, there's a lot of other things that need to be in there. Because, and you want to know who I think actually proved that is, what's his face that I don't like? Helicopter Man. What's his name?
Pinochet?
No, not him. The theory, the guy, the author, the German guy.
Hans Hermann Hoppe.
That's it. His theory is, for the most part, and the way most of his people talk about it, it is compatible with libertarianism, but it's awful.
Yeah.
Who would want to live in that? You know? So he's the one who convinced me that it's necessary but not sufficient, because I would not want to live in a Hoppian nightmare.
I use one of his analogies too when arguing to folks who believe in that. I'm like, okay, so don't use the word voluntary commune. That's a triggering word. Just call it a covenant community. If you are,
yeah, that's exactly what it
you
is.
already acknowledge people's right to self-select into communities, and in some cases on racial and ethnic and sexual bounds, things that really skeeve me out. So just expand that to economics. Let people do what they want in their own communities.
And you say that I say the same thing to them that I say to the other kind of libsocs. What happens when somebody there doesn't consent anymore? But the way Hoppe, is it Hop or Hoppe?
I think it's Hoppe, but yeah.
Hoppe. I say Hoppe, and people were just like, and I was like, hippity hoppity, property. The system he set up is way worse, because he views it as a feudal system. So you kind of have the lord of the manor that maintains all that retains all the property rights. So if you were living there and you were in this covenant community, but when you're 30 you discovered you're gay, out you go.
Yeah, man.
It doesn't matter whether you consent.
What Hoppe described sounds to me like the most fucked up homeowners association on the planet.
It is. It's the homeowners association from hell.
Yeah, dude. No, you don't get to vote on my life. Fuck off. That's the hell with you.
It is. It's awful. It's awful, and I don't get why some people are so attracted to it. It's the brutalism thing. They like it. He'll say it. Listen, I'll say it too. You should be able to discriminate against whoever you want, but I still think that makes you a turd.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you shouldn't have the right. We like to glorify sometimes the hard edge of libertarianism. Yeah, you should be able to put up a. I don't like using no pink-haired libertarian. Yeah, okay, yeah, you should. You're still an asshole.
You're allowed to be wrong in a libertarian society.
You're allowed to be a jerk, a real big jerk. Some of the biggest jerks I know are libertarians. All right, I'm going to flip through here and make sure there's no questions or anything. And I'm going to stick this up on YouTube. I think it will be very helpful, and I hope people link to it when they're talking with people to understand where there can be common ground.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, and like the comments are peaceful. I don't even see anybody. And some people came in here, I think, really tense.
Let's have a look. Homeowners associations are awful. Hell yeah, they are. I love you too, Chris Oglesby. Oh man, is there any questions? There's like a bunch of comments.
Yeah, in the beginning, you could tell some people were tense, and then they're like, oh, you know. I know some people thought I was turning traitor or something.
Nah, man. That's the great thing about the LP. We should be able to do what the mainstream political system can't do, which is to host multiple ideas and do so peacefully. Like, just talk about them. The left and the right now are so nasty. You know, oh, you nasty woman, you basket of deplorables. It's all red, blue, us versus them. The Libertarian Party is different. We've always been different. We're a place for people who think differently. And as long as you share some common principles with us, like, you're a friend of mine.
See, now you've gone into a different territory that's very important. Before, I was more talking like purity. You know, what is libertarianism? Whatever, you know, this is what it is, this is what it isn't. And I kind of touched on where I'm going to go when I said, and if I say it isn't that, don't take it personally. Now, here's where I have no problem with the libsocks. If I agree with them on one issue, I'll work with them. My problem with them is they're trying to say all of their other issues are this. Just because a libertarian believes something doesn't make that belief libertarian.
Yeah.
For instance, I'll give you an example, and I don't care if people call me not a libertarian for this. Nolan believed that the mere possession of something should never be a crime. I don't agree with that. If you got child porn, I'm sorry. I'll throw your
Fuck
ass in
you,
jail.
exactly.
I'm not a libertarian on that issue, so I don't try to say it's libertarian. Though I think I can make the argument.
I'm not a perfect libertarian. Look, I have a pet cause that gets me in trouble in libertarian circles, but it's the environment, all right? I'm an environmentalist. I care about the planet. I care about animals for reasons besides profit. And I think there are times when the government might need to step in and address market failure. If there's a government at all, one of the few things it can do that's okay is, you know, maybe sit down and talk about how we can not poison the world that we all live in. That's all right with me. So certain environmental regulations, if necessary, might be okay. I can't think of one offhand because 99% of the time they're crazy and biased and wrong in the government.
And they don't work.
Yeah, they don't work. They don't do what you're trying to do. But I could,
utility thing.
yeah. But I mean, I could envision a situation where, like, look, this is necessary. There's no profit incentive to do the right thing. We're going to have to come together as a community and decide what we're going to do about this. So that's not super libertarian, but it might have to happen.
But I can make an argument that child pornography possession of should be illegal. Here it goes.
I'm ready.
But then we would have to give up a lot of things in our life if this argument is true, and perhaps we should. If the thing by its very nature required violating someone's rights to produce it, it's tainted. It's like the fruit of the poisonous tree.
Sure.
So it is, you didn't commit the violence, but the thing is violence in itself type of thing. Now, I know I can argue against that too, but that's my libertarian argument. So when people ask me what I'm not libertarian on, I say, A, you might think I'm not libertarian on abortion, and I don't care. And I'm probably not libertarian on certain possession laws. I do think the mere possession of sarin gas should be a crime.
Well, look, your point is completely fair. What about blood diamonds or, like, you know, things that inherently violate the NAP just by like the product itself is a violation? We should reject those.
But in something like child porn or snuff films, that literally is the crime. Because some people go, well, you know, children died creating your shoes. You know, that probably did happen.
It's fucked up too.
But shoes in and of themselves don't require that.
Yeah.
Child pornography requires a child to porn, and that's a victim. So, you know, I get freaked out. That's one. Yeah, I get really, really freaked out over that.
Me too. Look, I'm freaking out in society right because I'm a very progressive-minded person. I love gay people. I have no problem with people dressing in drag or like kids doing what. But this thing with the little kid dancing for money at the gay club weirds me out. I'm not going to get a lot of love from my super lefty friends, but that's just a situation. I don't know what's because that's not about being decent to the kid or their sexuality. That's about sexualizing a child for a room full of horny men. That freaks me out, man. That doesn't seem right.
He doesn't know. The kid is adorable. Oh my God, I love that kid.
Yeah.
Desmond. You're talking about
yeah,
Desmond
but it's not the kid that's doing anything.
But he don't know. He doesn't know what's going through some of the minds there. I know. It's a tough thing. Dealing with kids, the reason think about the children always is such a great argument because it does pull. It does pull at your heartstrings. And I had my crisis of faith in libertarianism because I'm a Rothbardian, okay? But when I learned that Rothbard thought it wasn't violence to starve your children, I almost quit and left. I said, if my moral philosophy leads me to the conclusion that there's nothing morally wrong or you're not committing violence if you don't feed your children, then I've embraced a monstrous philosophy. Now I just think Rothbard was wrong. You know, I don't just say yet, but that. But you do have to come to grips with that. And a lot of libertarians don't sometimes, I think. A friend of mine once said to me, you guys don't want to taste your own wares. And I think that's true sometimes. And we'd be a lot more compassionate if we did, you know, because it's not all about money and products and exchange. There's people there. There's humanity there. And that needs to be the guiding thing. And that's where I think you and I agree. And I think that's why you're calling yourself left. And I don't consider that left. I just consider that being a good person.
I agree with you on that. I suspect it's because I came from the far left. Like I came from like steeped in a very, very socialist mindset, and I came to libertarianism later in life, and I still retain those roots. It still sort of informs how I got to libertarianism, and I suspect, especially in California, there's a lot of people who are going to come from that side, and I got to be able to speak to them. But that's the value of this party, is we got clean-cut dudes in suits. They can go out and talk to the Republicans, and they can speak to conservative crowds. They can make the fiscal arguments. But you need people like me too. You need people like Shipley. You need people like Caryn Ann. We all have something to bring to the table. And I don't want to see anybody rejecting somebody over a minor disagreement in economics.
But I don't think it's minor. That's okay. Maybe here's where we're finding we disagree. There's no disagreement with you and I. But when you have a different theory of property rights, it's not minor. Though, and here's where we get the caveat, you can voluntarily give up rights. That's the thing, but they will never answer me what happens when somebody no longer wants to do that.
Walter Block intensifies.
That's the question. And how you answer that determines whether you're in or out of what libertarianism is. Doesn't mean you're out of the party. Listen, I want people who only agree with one of our issues to join, to get that issue done. As long as they don't try to make us be all, you know, say you got this gun-toting, gay-hating, America, you know, whatever, guy, come work with us on gun rights. Don't try to bring your homophobia.
Yeah.
That type of thing. Keep that somewhere else. But I'll work with the lips. I'll work with Matt Conal on the things he cares about. I don't like him particularly as a person. But if I agree with him on one issue, yeah, I'll work with him. But don't try to co-opt the whole movement. That's where people are getting pissed off. Yeah,
because the noisiest libsocks can at times be wrong. And they're really good at being socialists, but not so great at being libertarians sometimes. And so I understand, man, the reaction, I feel it. I feel it in my guts because I hate the thing you hate. I hate authoritarianism. I hate command economies. I hate centralizing everything under government power. But this is just sort of my place. This is my mission. I speak for those who really aren't getting represented well.
Get it. And we need a whole lot more compassion. And the Brandon Finney thing you brought up is excellent, because that's where Shipley has zero. If something, and now the names he calls me now, because he calls me a constitutionalist. Oh my God. My husband would just laugh. He would like, because I like go like this and brings it up, just like, oh, your magic piece of paper, aren't you proud?
No, I agree, man. I reached out to Mr. Finney because I don't know him very well, so I did my own research. I saw some he's
a great guy.
Yeah, there's a lot of serious things being said about him right now, and so I just wanted to come to my own conclusions. I went and I looked him up. But
he's more right. Yeah. So he's right-leaning. Who cares?
It doesn't, and
let's stop.
I certainly understand. He's been very critical of the left, same as you, same as my friend Josh Smith. He said some things that might come across as abrasive if you're on the left. That doesn't mean let's paint him as a racist. Let's smear this guy we don't like. Frankly, I appreciate what he brings to the party. He's doing something I can't do. He's speaking to people that I can't reach. I want him on my team. Why are we trying to tear each other down?
Yeah, I agree. I think this was really, really productive, and nobody's arguing with us. We wanted an argument.
I expected this would be a little more controversial.
I'm just flipping through to make sure it's libertarians. We can argue about anything. But there's a lot of comments. But this is good. This will be really good on YouTube. Flipping through. And in the future, I might like to have you on my podcast because that's a different audience. And I like bringing, again, it's the compassionate libertarianism of trying to actually dialogue with people rather than yell at them. And more people, I think, need to hear that. That's why I'm a big fan of Larry Sharpe. Larry's not as radical as I'd like him to be, but he cares. It's the empathetic radicalism that I think is where this party needs to go. That's my opinion. The cold-hearted, stereotypical party of old white men is not going to win in this country. And your message and rugged individualism is not going to sell with very vulnerable people. You need to show how it's not going to kill them. Liberty isn't a suicide pact, and sometimes we act as if it were, and if somebody doesn't agree, then they're just a dirtbag or something. So yeah, that definitely true there. So I'm trying to think, because I've never done someone else on a podcast with me, but I'm going to keep that in mind.
Yeah, I'm happy to come on. I just wrapped up a big federal lawsuit. I've been doing all kinds of crazy stuff we can talk about. So yeah.
What was your lawsuit?
I actually,
you know, I'm a paralegal, right?
Oh, I didn't know that actually. So's my girlfriend. I sued the Los Angeles Community College District for unconstitutional free speech restrictions, and I just won. They settled for $225,000.
You know, I sued the state of Colorado on ballot selfies and won.
Nice. That's awesome.
That last time.
They wouldn't let you take a selfie with your ballot in Colorado?
Nope. And we were getting threatened with $1,000 fine and misdemeanor.
Damn.
Up to a year in jail, $1,000 fine. It was a first-degree misdemeanor. In Oklahoma, I think I have to say right, it's a felony.
Why?
In Oklahoma, I have candles here. This is why I keep looking back, so I almost set my hair on fire. In Oklahoma, it's a felony to insult the flag.
You can't say anything mean to it, or what?
I don't know. In Oklahoma, it's a felony to have an anarchist flag. Whoa. Because it's the Red Scare thing.
Damn.
Crazy, right? And I don't have the balls to go there and listen, I was scared to death to risk the misdemeanor here. I literally was, because I never got in trouble for anything in my life. I'm such a wuss. But can you imagine? Yeah, so yeah, it's crazy. California, I think you can take a picture, right?
I'm not sure. I've never done that. I'm not sure if you're allowed or if you're not. I'm totally ignorant of that issue.
Because that law needs to go.
Yeah.
It needs to go away. So yeah, I won that. I didn't get any money from it. I wouldn't have taken any money from it. Not saying that was wrong to ever.
And may I say, no, I'm not getting $225,000. That is going to the Foundation for Individual Rights and Education, who took my case on pro bono. Yeah. So I'm not getting rich off this. It was on principle.
Oh, and I wouldn't care again. No, but my lawyers got paid because they did it for free and they got their fees. And I think I had $100 left, and I donated it to the ACLU. Don't people freak out. They were a little bit better then, and they helped me. They're good on some things. They helped me with this case. So yeah, I didn't keep any money from it either. But I don't, because I saw somebody in here saying that you stole $225,000 of their money or something.
You know what really hurts is they spent probably 10 times that fighting me in court over something so simple as, like, I was passing out copies of the Constitution, and they threatened to call the police on me. So they spent 2 years and I don't even know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to silence student activities in California. That should offend everyone.
It's ridiculous. But we could have a great conversation because you and me, and there's a lot of people like us, prove one person can really make a big difference. Mm. I mean, it was amazing what was able to get done in Colorado on just that one issue. You just need to find the issue. And it might not be, curing cancer. It might just be your neighbor can have 10 chickens instead of 5, but you chip away at it. You chip away at it, and everybody's got to realize that they can, in fact, make a difference, because it's the helpless feeling.
It is.
That's, and I don't care if somebody doesn't want to vote. Go out and do something with you. Do something that's in your thing, but do something. Absolutely do something.
Damn right.
All right, is there anything you want to add?
Live hard, die young, make memes.
I'm 50, so I'm past that point, so I'll just continue living hard. I can make a bunch of jokes. All right, yeah, thumbs up to your hair. You're getting a lot of hair compliments.
Oh, thank you, friends. I can't. Of the two of us, I'm getting the hair compliments. What kind of world is this?
Yes, you're. When you get off here, though, look up Seth Ryan Levy. You're gonna laugh.
I'll look him up.
Yeah. All right, y'all. I think we're gonna head off now. I will get this on YouTube, and this stream is public. I would love it if everyone would take this stream and share it to your groups. Share it to your county group or your state group or whatever. And let's tone down the animosity a bit and show that even though we didn't really disagree, I think even if we did, the conversation still would have been fine. There wouldn't have been freak out, you know? And we'll find something we disagree on, and then we'll be all fighting about it. Just don't make me cry. Oh. All right. I cry. You got to understand. I cry in commercials, you know.
I'll be kind.
Yeah. I cry so easy, it's not even funny. All right, y'all, please share it around. Thank you so much for spending the time with me. I really, really appreciate it. And we've wanted to do this for a while, and I'm glad we finally got to.
Me too. I'm thankful for the discussion, my friend.
Yeah. You have an awesome night.
Take care, Caryn Ann.
Bye-bye.